No, I'm kidding. I was just gonna sit here in silence just to see how long I could go.
You lasted 1 second.
I really flopped at that.
Oh, lovely.
Welcome everyone to another Hot Mess Moments.
Rawr.
No. So before this, y'all, off camera, well, not off camera, we were on camera. Beth was describing to me this really cringy TikTok trend that people are doing where they're like, be the alpha or something. And just like,
it's like, once you find your alpha, and it's like all these straight women being like, once you find your alpha, and it's like them in front of a fan with their hair being blown back with like a really masculine, like behind them. And typically there's like a guy going like that. And then it just, there's a second pause. And then all of a sudden it's just like, rawr, coming from the girls. It's so bad. Don't do it.
I hate that. I hate everything about that. I hate everything that it stands for. Well, speaking...
I know, I'm a Leo, so don't abuse lions like that.
Truly. And
Right.
Don't abuse water. What is Aquarius? I'm an Aquarius. What would that even be?
So what's weird is Aquarius is an air sign.
Yeah.
Even though it says aqua in it, so I don't know.
I think it's just we're a mess. We don't even know what we are. So there you go.
What is Aquarius? Because Cancer's a crab, Pisces is a fish, Leo's a lion,
Aquarius
Aries is a ram.
Broken vase of water, maybe?
I'm looking this up. This is important before we even talk about the nanny or anything. Aquarius. Someone is listening to this and being like, girl.
They're like, get to the episode, you dumb asses. Come on.
Yeah.
While Beth looks this up, for those that are on visual on YouTube, look at this cringy mug that my work gave me. Isn't that just... Okay, I'll describe it. You describe it.
Okay. First of all... That's like if you were straight, what you would look like.
Yes.
Am I wrong?
No, it is.
It's like all the elements of Dylan, but for whatever reason, it's just, but I don't care that there's a pride shirt that you're wearing. Like,
yeah,
you're straight in that photo. But I do kind of love, it says Dylan, best host. And all I have to say is, where?
Oh!
No.
You don't have a mug to prove it.
Bitch, I found the Aquarius symbol. Can I share my screen?
Yeah.
This
go for
is
it.
important.
How do you do that?
This is important. I'm
there we
going
go.
to do this. Share screen. Oh God, I'm like.
For anyone on audio only, I will describe what the Aquarius symbol looks
Look
like.
it!
Oh, cake! Oh my God. Can I be the Aquarius symbol?
Oh no, I have like a thing. Look at that. It is all cakes.
So the Aquarius symbol, Beth Googled it, and it's a guy with a very nice butt who is pouring water out of a jug, and I wish I was the floor.
It is a moment. So yeah, I think it's called like the water bearer or something like that. Yeah, water bearer.
Oh,
So there you go.
Honestly,
what is the animal? An owl? What?
My symbol is an owl. Okay, weird connection here. My grandma used to collect owl things. Creepy. She also used to collect clowns. So there was a lot going on with my grandma. She also used to collect Furbies.
And that concludes our episode of Hot Mess Moments. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Wait. I love that we're only into the 4th episode, and I've mentioned my grandma now in 2 episodes.
I've never once ever heard you talk about your grandma until this podcast. We've been friends for fully almost 4 years, and I've never heard you once talk about your grandma. That's a lie. But
we're learning a lot. Okay, so wait, let's get into. We have a lot to talk about with the Nanny and Lost. But before we get into that, my name's Dylan, aka Dylan Zahner. I'm a hot mess, and apparently I am supposed to be a really hot guy that pours water out of an urn. Beth, who are you?
Rawr. I'm a Leo named Beth, also known as Augusta Wind 11. And he's the hot mess, and I'm the moment.
Oh, I like that. That was good.
Thank you. I came up with it right now.
So we are gonna get into episode 4, not episode 2 like we originally thought, of the Nuchslep.
The Nuchslep.
And this will be the second time I viewed it because we watched it first originally thinking it was episode 2. So I really got to know this episode. And honestly, this episode is so much better on a second viewing. I mean, it was great the first time, but it's even better the second time.
It's also really good on a 37th viewing, I have to say. The 36th viewing was good, but this one was so much better at 37.
I mean, there are so many great moments. I have no doubt that on the 37th, this would be great because I even pointed out, and we'll get to that later, like in this like recap. I was pointing out stuff that Beth didn't even notice until this viewing because some of these extras.
We had a whole moment where we literally went back because for those that don't know, we do try to watch the episodes together where we really don't have any kind of commentary. We don't talk. We're on, muted and that kind of thing. However, upon this viewing, Dylan was like, I'm not going to bring this up at the podcast, but here we are at minute 6 and we haven't even started talking about it, but we're going to talk about it anyway. He's like, but look at the extras in this scene. And so we kept watching it. There's like a woman who's holding a Junior Mints box, like movies, like theater junior. What am I doing?
I don't know what you're doing with your hands. Okay.
And she's like looking down the box and like, ooh, and like pointing at it. And it's
so weird.
Definitely asked the extras to do the most.
Yeah,
extras
they're like
were extra.
Yeah, they were like overact, but then overact the overacting. That's basically what this was.
So
okay,
bad.
We're getting so off tangent. I'm so sorry. So here we are, the Nuchslep. I will give you my initial thoughts of the episode. Really great concept of this episode. It is a Maggie-centric episode, which if you watch like the last few episodes, Maggie is not my favorite character. And I'm glad that in this episode, we get to see her shine. We get to see more character moments from her. I was asking this in the 3rd episode. I was like, we need to see more from Maggie. She needs to have some more funny moments. I still think she doesn't have as many funny moments, but she's still great as a character. I have to rate this episode probably like an 8 out of 10, only because if I had to like find one fault in it, it is there are a few moments in it that don't age well. Mm-hmm. Like there is a turban joke and like it's kind of like ooh kind of moment. But other than that, it's a great episode.
And I will say this too, and I'm not trying to like defend a turban joke. That's not what I'm saying. But turbans were a thing that a lot of people of upper class would be wearing and such too. Mm-hmm. So we don't know if they meant culturally somebody who wears a turban or if they meant someone who is like trying to be style,
agreed.
But still, safe thing to do would be to like not make a joke.
Yeah. Fully.
But I totally agree with you. This is the concept of this episode I also feel like hasn't aged well either. I personally don't know of anybody who I grew up with who needed a chaperone when they went on their dates. So
I did.
Tell me about it.
Okay, so when I was in 4th, 5th, 6th, one of those grades,
Okay, time out. 4th, 5th, 6th grade. Of course you need a chaperone because you can't be home alone by yourself at that age.
Well, also, okay, so I did kind of need a chaperone. So the first, when I was like fully out, there was this cheerleader guy that I think I was like 15, 16, and he was like 15. And we went on a date at a movie theater together. And I could be actually, no, what am I saying? I was like 18, and my mom had to drive us to the movie theater together. And
but did she sit in the movie with you?
She did not sit, but she definitely
That's not a chaperone. That's a chauffeur.
That's true.
I'm talking about a full-on chaperone, and not when you're in friggin' elementary school.
Shut up. Don't judge.
That's so stupid. I love it. But I mean, like, this concept, it was actually seemed like it was kind of outdated for the 90s, which is what the whole point was. This idea that, boys and girls can't be trusted on an awkward first date together, when they're 14 and 16 or whatever years old. And so that's what I think is, I mean, that's kind of the point, right? Is like,
Yeah.
Fran's like, who has a chaperone anymore? The Nuchslep. A Nuchslep being like, you know, the third wheel, the chaperone, that, you know, the person who, you know.
Yeah, me when I become 40 and I eventually just become like a Nuchslep. I feel like that's going to be my trajectory in life post hot mess moments. But in this episode, do you want to, like, I'm just going to give a quick rundown of the episode and then let's just talk about our best funny moments. So basically what happened in this episode was Fran decides to buy Chinese food for the family because she's like, we have to introduce them to other cultures and like how Jewish people eat. And that's like the joke that she's like putting in there. And the person who delivers the food is the waiter from the first episode who was sucking on Maggie's tongue. And he decides that he wants to ask her out on a date. And Maggie is like, she's butterflies, she's fluttering, she's so excited about this moment. And so Fran doesn't want to disappoint Maggie. And so she's like, yeah, sure, go on the date without talking to the dad first. So she goes and talks to Maxwell. And she convinces Maxwell, surprisingly pretty easy, to allow them to go on this date. But Maxwell comes in with a banger of an idea and is like, well, you're going to be chaperoning her during this date. That's the only way I'm going to approve this. So poor Fran then has to chaperone the boring Maggie and her date to the movie theater where...
As a reminder, the date is played by James Marsden. So
who is very attractive. He's definitely of age, like at this point. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Like he looks much older than Maggie, which I still am a little weirded out by because I'm like, James Marsden, you fully look like you could be like, I don't know. You're like a hair shy of being able to date some of the other people that are on this show.
Fran.
Like, Fran. I didn't want to say it, but like, yeah, you look like you could be dating Fran.
But we do know that the character that he's playing is a senior in high school. Because it is mentioned that he's trying to get into Yale to study drama and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is a key point.
Yeah, which I do want to talk about in a bit because I thought that was an interesting twist of the episode. So they go to the movie theater and Fran's personality quickly outshines Maggie's in this situation. And it is shown that Maggie has no social aptitude at all when it comes to interacting with a guy on a date. And because of this, it is assumed that what's the date's name? I just want to call him James. Eddie. So when Eddie calls the next day and wants to talk to Fran, it is assumed the reason why he's calling is because he wants to date Fran, which causes a really awkward moment when Fran doesn't on the phone immediately like deny this. She's just like, yeah, okay, Eddie, bye. And just like, yeah. She just became a duck. She just became a duck at the table.
This won't be the last time we hear that. There's certain things that are kind of like little running gags, and a lot of it is Fran's just like nasal voice just going, meh, meh. And that's what I think is so stupid, but I love it so much.
I cannot wait to see more of that because it was really funny when she's on the phone. So then we have this entire moment where Maggie is really mad, deservedly so, that she thinks her nanny just stole her boyfriend. And Fran takes it upon herself to kind of teach Maggie girlfriend code, or as she calls it,
the OGC.
The OGC. And so she's like, I want to be your girlfriend, not your nanny. You're too old to have a nanny at this point. This is more of a friendship that we have, not a superior, relationship. So then she makes a promise to Maggie that when she meets up with Eddie, she's going to break up with Eddie and like dump him and let him down and really make it like visceral and just like rub it in his face. So
destroy him.
Yeah, destroy him. He's gonna fucking destroy. I saw your face. You're like, are we going down this route? I could visibly see it on your face the moment I started. You were like, oh, well, this is where we're going.
I feel like my eyes briefly went, Okay, here we go.
Yeah. So Eddie shows up and brings ribs, which is a really funny gag in this moment. And Fran's like, oh, you bring in ribs to like sauce me up and make me, feel special. And then Eddie reveals, no, I brought the ribs to bribe you because I want you to give my headshot and I think he says resume, which I thought, which is a bit weird because it's for an acting role. I'm not an actor.
That is called a resume, though.
It is?
So, like, your headshot and resume is typically one. It's like your photos on one side and your resumes on the back. Your acting resume.
Oh, cool. Okay, so yeah. So Eddie's like, can you give my resume to Maxwell because I would love to be in one of his productions. And so Fran, it's really weird. It's just like cool with this idea. I was like weirded out. I was like, do you not find this weird that he's like manipulating you to like kind of it's weird because Eddie's like, I don't want to make this awkward for Maggie because I like Maggie. I don't want to ruin that relationship. And
the real key here is that he doesn't want Maggie to think he only likes her because of who her father is. Like, he really wants her to know that, like, yeah, I want to be an actor and I want Mr. Sheffield to know that I'm an actor and those kind of things. But, like, that's not why I like you. I like you for you. Versus Fran. Yeah, the whole point of this is that Fran is pushy in this episode. Like, there's the line where she's talking with Maxwell, with Mr. Sheffield, and she's saying, have you ever seen like those mother birds who like push their, little birdies out of the nest so that they learn how to fly? And the whole point is that Maxwell says, you're too pushy. Like, you should never have pushed her to go on a date. And at the end here, this is where Eddie says, and she goes, pushy. And he goes, yeah. I mean, yeah. And she's like, just give me the pictures, that kind of thing. So
yeah, I like it. I still felt a little bit weird because like I was thinking it from my perspective. If I was Fran and someone wanted to privately call me just to like get something from me and I had just met them the other day, I'd be like, I don't know how I feel about you, sir. You're supposed to be like dating someone that I'm the nanny for. But I get
also I also think that the problem I have here is if he was genuinely interested in Maggie, how come he didn't call her?
It's true. He didn't.
He hasn't done anything to show interest in her until he's like, I thought maybe Maggie and I could go for a walk. And I was like, what a tool.
Yeah,
I feel like you should have showed some interest in her because you called her nanny the next day. Like, this is a prime example of like men, specifically straight men, not understanding how to talk to women or just like being completely socially unaware. Like, what message do you think that you're sending when the girl that you supposedly like and who likes you don't call for a few days after their first date? Yeah. And you want to continue dating her? No!
Yeah.
This is before texting. You give her a proper phone call.
Go in, Beth. Go in. You tell him. So, Beth, that's basically how the episode ends. But I want to get into like the details and like funny moments and silly things that happened throughout. Yeah. So, I was having a hard time because there's a few fashion moments because I do want to pick my fashion outfit of the episode.
Yes.
But I was having a hard time picking just one. So, but I did. Once I saw the theater date outfit where it's like these leather strapped sleeves and this like beautiful black ensemble that she's wearing, so cute, is not a repeat outfit that we've seen so far. And I was like, oh, she is just so hot. Fran, you are so hot.
But also, who wears that as a chaperone on a date?
Yeah, true.
No wonder.
It's Fran. We allow it.
I know.
Another really funny moment is in my character analysis of Niles, I was like, is he going to be gay? Or I didn't say that. I said that after the first episode. I was like, I hope he's gay. And this joke of when he's sick and is like, I'm feeling queer. And she's like, basically like, oh, come out of the closet, darling. Or
it's something. The 90s.
It's the 90s, which is funny because the 90s were still pretty rough for people coming out. Like there was definitely like in TV, there was a wave of like more acceptance and like characters showing up in television. Even though they were stereotypes, there was a lot more queer presence in television. But it was hilarious to see this moment because I was just like, oh my God, are we in the 4th episode and we're truly going to get Niles coming out as gay? And I was like, oh, they mean, I got it. I get the gag now. It's a funny joke. I really love it.
You're British. You speak the same language, but at the bottom line, you're still foreigners.
Yeah. And then Fran having skillful lips, I was dying at that. She's like, you haven't seen the last of it or something. It's so good.
You haven't seen the full story or whatever it is. Yeah.
So another really funny moment that is kind of like a side story is Cece getting this gift of a dog.
I can't wait to talk about this. This is one of my favorite things about the nanny. Continue.
The dog?
Yes.
Okay. So there is a moment during this episode where Maxwell, like Cece is just like in the house. I don't know. They must have been having a meeting and Maxwell, I could be wrong, but Maxwell shows up and is like, I have a gift for you because it's her birthday. Mm-hmm. And so she's showing up because they're going to go to dinner or something like that.
Yes, they made reservations for her birthday. And he said, before you go out, I got you a gift. Right. And he tells her to sit on the couch in his office and hold out her hand and close her eyes. But he has this whole preamble speech where he goes, Cece, a woman like you shouldn't be home alone. And that you deserve someone who loves you as much as you love them. And she's just like, oh, Maxwell. And so excited that she thinks she's about to get proposed to.
I feel bad for Cece. After learning they're not fucking, they're not in a relationship.
And she's so desperate to...
She is so desperate for that Maxwell dick. So desperate. And I mean, same. After the last episode, I feel you, girl. But I felt so bad for Cece. But I love when she sees the dog. She's like, an engagement dog? Oh, an engaging dog.
What an engaging dog. It's so good. I say that kind of shit all the time. This is key Cece Babcock humor, okay? Yeah. So Cece is often the butt of the jokes, as we know. But she does have these moments where she says something and then just like repeats it, but with like a slight change to like, because she realizes something quickly. That is Cece's humor throughout the series.
It's so
and
good.
I love it. So this is the first real example of it that we get to see. And I love this moment. She's like, engagement dog? Huh? What an engaging dog. Like, it's just so stupid, but I love it.
I have a theory. You're all about theories with Lost. Well, I have a theory about the nanny.
Give me this theory. Lay it on me.
So after seeing this moment, I was like, okay, here's where I think this is going to go.
Okay.
So we've already established that Maxwell and Cece are not dating. They are not a thing. I could see a redemption arc for Cece. And hear me out. Because I know how sitcoms typically work. What I think is going to happen is there's going to be a moment where Fran and Cece become friends. And something is going to happen to where the both of you are giving me mad poker face right now. I love this.
I'm trying really hard.
So
go back.
I feel like Cece and Fran are actually going to connect because of something. I don't know whether it's like maybe like Fran and Maxwell try to work it out and they date and it doesn't work or something. And they have something to relate to. So I can see.
Do you think that Fran and Maxwell have sexual tension?
I absolutely see them getting together. Absolutely. I don't think I don't think it'll be in the first season. I think it'll be maybe something they hit on season 2 or season 3. But absolutely. There's going to be an arc where they date. Maybe there's like a roller coaster moment. And then I think in the finale they get married. That's how I see it. I see it happening. I don't know if that's true or not.
And what do you think that Cece's trajectory is then?
I see Cece's trajectory as being she finally comes to terms with the fact that Maxwell is not going to date her. So she turns to Fran maybe to ask for advice on like guys and getting out there because Fran is like so sociable and is like fun. They become close friends. Then maybe their relationship gets a little tensious because then Maxwell and Fran start dating. And then eventually Cece just accepts this relationship because it's best for what's for the family, and they still remain friends. That's just what I see it happening, just based off the first 4 episodes. Let's
Sorry,
see how
I was
wrong I
really
am.
looking at you the whole time, and then I looked over to what I look like, and I looked like so uninterested in whatever you were saying. Okay, good times.
Yeah, she's trying to keep the best.
I think that that's a fun theory. I can't wait to see if that's how it shakes out or not.
Yeah,
I know exactly how it shakes out, but I can't wait to see how it goes. Yeah, I think that that's fun. And I think that it's not only, there's a lot that actually happens in this scene that builds up and kind of like builds it up for the rest of the series. The number one thing here being how the dog reacts to Cece versus Fran. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
It's so funny. So, this dog originally doesn't have a name. Fran walks into the room after it barks and snips at Cece.
Growls.
Yeah, it's like, rawr, doesn't like her.
Rawr.
And yeah, she said, rawr. I hate that everything's going to come back to that. I know it will for the rest of this episode. Rawr. So it's like snipping and barking and yelping at Cece. And Fran comes in, and this dog is immediately lovable, especially after Cece saying like that. Like she said something about like I don't know if I don't know if that dog's gonna love anyone or like or.
Maxwell says,
yeah.
remember that, dogs take a little while to warm up to people. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to hit it off right off the bat. And then Fran walks in.
Yeah.
And the dog instantly loves Fran.
Which is reminiscent. The dog is the audience here, where
100%.
you're not meant to like Cece, but you're meant to fall in love with Fran. And so she's like, "Oh, you look like a Chester.
Chestnut. You should call him Chester."
Chester, yeah. And Cece's like, "I don't know." And then it snips at her again. She's like, "Okay, Chester it is." And I love, and I'm hoping that Chester shows up again because, first off, Chester, I'm not a big Pomeranian person. Mm-hmm. Never have been. One of my friends growing up had a Pomeranian, and that dog was a devil. Did not like that Pomeranian. And so seeing this Pomeranian being actually really cute and fuzzy and fun, I was like, oh, Chester, my heart. I love Chester. I hope Chester shows up again.
So I'm going to give you some fun background information.
Okay.
Chester is Chester's real name, and it is Fran Drescher's actual dog. So, so the reason why they actually trained Cece in this scene to or Lauren Lane, who's the actress, to kind of like hold him and do like little jerk motions with him. So she's like, "He's my dog," like that, because they know that Chester doesn't like that. And Fran knows that he'll just go like that. And that's why Fran is not in this scene initially. So that's why she comes right around the corner, and he instantly gets all excited because he loves Fran in real life. So that is Fran Drescher's real dog, Chester.
I love that. And is his name actually Chester?
Yeah.
Oh, my heart. That's actually a really cute fact. I love that.
Isn't it cute? I love it so much. Fran Drescher's a big Pomeranian person. So she's had, I think, at least 3, if not more, Pomeranians over the past, 30 years or so. So they often will make like a little guest appearance in her sitcoms.
Aw, that's cute. I didn't know that. Well, if you're listening, Fran, love your Pomeranian. Your Pomeranian has turned me on Pomeranians. I am no longer a Pomeranian hater.
I'm not a big small dog person. Like, I don't like smaller dogs for the most part, but I have found that I think that Pomeranians are cute. And, but I do think that they're very particular. And I think the reason why it works really well in this like format is because I think Pomeranians really love their owners and the people they get to see a lot, but they don't necessarily like other people. So I think that that's why it's even better in this scene, because clearly Chester, the dog, does not know Lauren Lane, the actress. So Lauren knows what to do to get him to get like, I want to be around you. But the second Fran walks in, it's like, yay, my mom.
I also wrote down in my notes that I swear this entire show is sponsored by Malamar. This is like the third or fourth time that we've seen Malamar show up in season 1. and watching Fran lay in bed eating Malamars, trying to coax Maggie into welcoming in the OGC, I was like, ooh, Fran, I want a Malamar now. That looks really good. I was like, if this is sponsored,
I've
it's
never
working.
had one.
I haven't either, but I've heard of Malamars. I do know what a Malamar is.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like it's kind of like a marshmallow, kind of chocolate covered marshmallow kind of filling. Right?
Let me Google. I want to make sure that I'm speaking correctly about this.
Yeah, I really would hate it if we were wrong about Malamars because I feel like we'd get canceled.
Yeah,
it's just the one thing to be.
Yeah, it is. So it is it's like a chocolate covered marshmallow. But the one that she was eating looked like it was a chocolate marshmallow.
Chocolate marshmallow, yeah, yes.
It was like chocolatey. And that's why I was like, oh, I want that. I want that Malamar.
It did look good.
So we go over some of the OGC codes, such as never gossip.
And OGC stands for Official Girlfriend's Code.
Yep. And the OGC in my life is the official gay code. So like our first one is never bottom for the same man twice. And no, I'm just kidding. I could be like really stereotypical and just name a bunch. But no, like this OGC code is so silly. So they're like never gossip. I think code number 2 is if a girlfriend like dates another guy, they have to dump them. So
the whole point of this episode was girlfriend's code number 2, which is if a girl is in love with a guy, but that guy falls in love with the girl's friend is obligated to dump him because he doesn't see how amazing the other girl who has a crush on him is. That's essentially it.
And I love this moment because it's basically Fran making up any kind of rule that she wants in order to get Maggie to do what she wants. And so she's like, oh, those Malamars look good. Let me have one. She's like, rule number 3, when it comes to chocolate, it's anybody's game.
And she's like dumping over the empty box of Malamars at that point. And then you see her at the very, like when she's about to confront Eddie, and she's like, girlfriend's code number 72. Just because you're about to dump somebody doesn't mean that you can't look your best. And she's like putting on lipstick and such. So, this is something that we will continually see is just this kind of relationship. This is why I like this episode so much because it really sets up what Fran and Maggie's relationship will be like for the rest of this series. This idea that, she's a caretaker and a caregiver for the family and for Maggie, but for the most part, she's going to be more of like an older sister figure for Maggie than anything else.
And this still ties into my theory where I think the arc of Maggie is because she's established this, I am your girlfriend, I am not your nanny. Maggie is going to try to replicate and be Fran at some point. And it'll get to the moment where maybe she takes it a little too far and Fran's going to have to like reel her in being like, whoa. This is not what I meant when I said like, go out and explore the world. And like Maggie, I don't know, goes out and does something.
Just has her legs open.
Yeah, she just has her legs open. She's like, oh. I don't know. She's just like got her legs open. She's just shimmying her thighs.
What thighs? She's a stick figure.
Yeah.
No, I can't wait to see how that theory comes about as well.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited. So lastly, one big thing that I want to hit on, there's 2 main things. One, love Niall's sassiness in this episode. He's like, oh, I'm here for the ladle. And it's like, oh, he's always got a funny quip.
Back the ladle.
Yeah, he's so funny. But the sexual tension at the end between Maxwell and Fran. So this is you're this face. So I don't know. Sorry. Okay, I noticed this. So after Eddie and Maggie leave, and Fran walks into the kitchen, and it's just Fran and Maxwell. It's just like the aura and energy. There is a good chemistry between the two of them as like actors.
Oh, okay, as actors.
Yeah, as actors. There's like a really good chemistry between the both of them that I just read, they just mesh well so good. And so when you get a scene and it's just the two of them, I'm like, Are they fucking? Like, I just get that vibe. Not the actor
Dylan
and
just
actress.
really wants Maxwell and Fran to get together.
I
It's
do.
episode 4.
I do. I think it's gonna happen. I really want it to happen. Do I think it'll be a good relationship? God, who knows? But I really could see it because when they're in that scene together within the kitchen before Chester runs in and like we get the final scene where she's like holding Chester. There is just this like body chemistry, the way that they're like standing next to each other. It just is very like open and welcoming. And I was like, I don't know if it's just like me reading into like maybe their off-screen friendship that the actors had with one another, but it reads as like really good chemistry on camera. And that's why I love scenes where Fran and Maxwell are in there together.
I do think that there's a certain level of him opening up as a father and like kind of almost learning how to parent through Fran, someone who doesn't have kids but is just as got thrown into this nanny role. And I feel like there is going to be a chemistry just because the two of them are, I hate to say it this word, but basically co-parenting.
Yeah, no, they are.
So they're co-parenting, like obviously Maxwell has the ultimate say and everything, but Fran is the one that is really kind of opening him up in those kind of things. So I definitely can see like why you would detect some chemistry there.
Okay, so now let's get into the MVP and LVP of the episode.
Yes, I can't wait to hear.
So after watching this episode, I think my MVP is going to be Niles. Because every scene that Niles was in made me laugh and was so funny. Even though the episode's emphasis isn't on Niles, I just love Niles so much.
He's
like
such a good character.
I think, depending on how like his humor develops, I could totally see a spinoff of Niles. Like I would watch a show just about Niles.
We've talked about Cece, Fran, Max. What do you think about the fourth adult who's in that household? Where do you think Niles' story is going to go? There is a story.
I don't know if there will be a story for Niles. I think he is simply there as like the flavoring within a scene. Okay. I could see him. I definitely could see them queer coding the character to the point where it's like always a recurring gag of like, Niles is gay, but he's like, we're not going to talk about it. Like, I could see that being like a punchline. They do talk about it. But.
They said that. In this scene, in the very beginning where he goes, I'm feeling queer, and she makes that joke or whatever, she says, don't ask, don't tell, which was in effect in the 90s. So the don't ask, don't tell, what do you call it? Like policy?
Yeah, it was a shit ruling. It was fucking shit is what it was.
It was fucking ridiculous.
And we're glad it's gone. I have to give my LVP, though, to... I'm going to give it to Eddie because...
I was thinking Eddie, yes!
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of Eddie this episode. He's kind of a scumbag, and he totally used his relationship with... Maggie in order to further his own career in acting. And you know what? I hope he doesn't get cast. And I hope it teaches him listening. I hope he chokes.
I hope he becomes Cyclops.
Oh my God. He's so hot as Cyclops.
I mean, he really is cute though.
Yeah.
I know that I'm not doing MVPs and LVPs for the nanny, but I have to say that like my Miss Congeniality, I'm just kidding. Like the runner-up prize for MVP is the old woman who sits next to Fran in the movie theater. And she's, the Nuchslep's getting upset. Oh, the Nuchslep's talking about when she used to have a social life. Oh, the Nuchslep. It's so good. It is. That older couple is hysterical. I love that woman so much.
Yeah, she was great. Like, whoever decided to write those two characters in there, genius. They like painted the scene so well and they were so funny.
It was so good. And just reaffirming everything that Fran just said to Maxwell in the scene before. It's so good.
Yep.
Any other thoughts about the episode before I go off the rails?
No, I think that pretty much sums up everything. I can't wait for episode 5. I think it's going to be a good one. And honestly, One joke that I just want to talk about really fast, so funny, the Eggos joke made me laugh because I grew up like eating Eggos, and there's a scene in this where she goes to taste the Belgian waffles that Niles makes. She's just like, ooh, Eggos. And he's like, Belgian waffles, dear. And she's like, close enough.
It's so ridiculous. 90s kids in particular, I feel like Eggos were like, we had commercials about Eggos like all the time. Lego my Eggo, like back in the 90s. So just, I thought that was really funny.
It was really good. Okay, other than that, that's my final thoughts on the Nuchslep.
The Nuchslep. I will say episode 5, I think, is a funny one. But I feel like episode 5 is the last episode before we really start getting into like, oh, there's slapstick comedy. Oh, there's this and that and other things happening. So I can't wait. I feel like we're almost over the hump of the beginning of the exposition of the show.
Sweet. And now, previously on Lost, as they say on Lost.
Oh, bitch! That was like very similar to what he said.
Was it?
I mean, he does say that, but I mean, like the tone. It was really close.
It's like I'm a fan of the show or something.
It's almost like you have a really deep voice when you want that one.
That's true.
So this episode is called Walkabout. And it focuses mostly, it's another character-driven episode, and it focuses mostly on Locke, who is our mystery man. So I was really excited to get to know Locke a little bit better. I have to say, I have thought about this episode so much over the past couple days, because we watched this 2 days ago, or 3 days ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And normally we record this right after, but I had some time to really marinate on this episode, and like, I just love Locke so much. Like, there's so many weird things about him, but I also, like, I want to know more. I'm, like, so invested in his character, and I just, like, can we protect him at all costs?
I want to reveal a fun fact. Usually when people rate every episode of Lost, this is usually within the top 5 episodes of Lost. Because,
oh, wow. Okay.
Because it is an episode that continually makes you think. You could really break down the layers of character acting that Locke does in terms of like how we see him from the start to how we see him now. And his disability is never brought up within like the first 4 episodes.
Right.
And it really shapes aspects of his character and like how we see him, and it's just like it's so good. Like the writing is so good in this episode.
The writing is fantastic, and just little things too that give you clues before the final. Like, so you know, I'll go over like the plot points or whatever in a second, but just to say that the reveal that he's in a wheelchair in like the last 3 minutes of the episode before the plane crash, and like it just puts all of the previous things that they were like, there were some pretty heavy-handed clues once you know that pointed to it. And I wrote down throughout this, they have 2 separate times where they're really focusing on why is Locke looking at his right foot to see if he can move his toes or whatever. So the first time that they show is after, actually I can't remember if he gets
it's
knocked down
crashes.
by the boar. Okay, so when the plane crashes, that's right. They're doing a flashback, and you see him laying on the sand, like everybody. There's chaos everywhere. The plane had just crashed. He's laying on the sand, and he kind of lifts up his head and sees, and he kind of moves his foot a little bit like this. And my initial thought was he's trying to see if he can move because he doesn't. He just crashed. He doesn't know if he can move or not. The second time it happens. This is after we've gotten the clue that he's been called the Colonel, so I have a theory, and I'll get to that in a second. In his office, he gets a phone call. He gets run. He kind of, I don't know if he gets run down by the boar, if he like throws Kate out of the way or something like that. But he takes a hard hit onto the ground, and he's laying there. And you could see him really, the wind was knocked out of him. He was really kind of all over the place mentally, but you can see him checking to see if he can wiggle his foot. So at that moment, I was like, it's weird that he would do that again if he didn't have a spinal injury beforehand. So my theory, before I get into anything else, is to preface this by saying, between the clues of being called the Colonel and potentially having a spinal injury, all these different kinds of things, I think he must have been like a deep undercover kind of military guy who got injured on the job with a spinal injury. So they put him in like these like more information getting kind of office kind of situations or whatever, as somebody who can kind of continue his work, but is also like not going to be on the front lines by any means, because I think he was quadriplegic. I could be wrong. Like that's kind of like what they give you.
Yeah.
So my theory, he also knows all of this information about like survival stuff and just things that like he knows specifically potentially what kind of boar it was and all these other things. So it either could be because he was preparing for the walkabout that he wanted to do in Australia for this trip, or it could be because he just has this knowledge from his past life.
Interesting.
So,
That's a very interesting take on this episode. I absolutely see that, because just to preface this, I've only rewatched Lost twice.
Okay.
And the second viewing, it was much more jumbled and all over the place. The first time I watched this, I think I had a very similar like thought process that you did at this moment, where I was putting all of these things together, and that was kind of my like determination. I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. Like I was just in the same mindset that you were. But
I think that this is
What? What? Beth just looked at her notes and like a gasp. What?
So I wrote Lock, Lock, and I've been debating whether or not there's an E at the end.
There is an E. There is an E. Yeah.
Okay, that will help me in the future, because I wrote, it says boars. Why is cock smiling? It does not say Lock. It says cock. Am I wrong? I just looked down at my notes that I haven't looked at. I just saw cock smiling, and I went, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, that's the porn parody of Lost.
Hey, but yeah, I would also. So let's kind of talk a little bit about like how this comes to be.
Yeah, I think like specifically for this episode, you do have to kind of go from beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
Unlike the last episode, because Kate's episode was kind of all over the place, but this one actually furthers the plot quite a bit.
Yeah, so the first thing that happens is they're all like hanging out at night, and there's the dog Vincent will not stop barking. I'm sorry, this is a Labrador Retriever who has been super calm this entire time. Every time they've seen him, even in the jungle when there's been weird shit going on, the dog has not barked. So I wrote, a calm dog barking is never a good sign. So the fact that this dog keeps barking, and by the way, this is just like, I don't know if this is just a theme that I just have to get used to or whatever, but I feel like these bitches never hear growling. Like they were like, what's that over there? And it's like a polar bear being like, rah, rah, rah. And they're like, what is that? And you're like, we should go investigate.
They're
like, you're an idiot.
Do y'all hear something? Is that the wind? And it's like fully like a velociraptor screaming, or it's like a plane crashing behind them, or there's like a roaring fire, and they're just like,
what is that?
It's just so hot in here. Yeah.
But they hear like there's like growling and foraging, and there's obviously a creature of some kind in the plane remnants. And so I could not stop laughing because Jack has the weakest little pencil flashlight I've ever seen in my life. And he goes up and he's like trying to look in there. And Sawyer has this actual flashlight.
That's
and
huge.
I just was laughing. It's huge. I was laughing because they do kind of make a note about this in a second, which is important. But like when they're like lining up going over there, like Jack has like the equivalent of a pen. Just like, oh, right. And then Sawyer has this huge flashlight. I'm like, one of you should clearly be leading, and it's not Jack. I'm just putting it out there. So they, excuse me, they do get up to the plane. Jack is trying with the one beam of light that would never even show you if you dropped a contact on the ground, like where, he's trying to look into this huge, vast, like cabin of the plane. And Sawyer goes, let me put some real light on this. And you see a boar, and then the boars charge, and all the people start running, and Charlie gets kind of hit a little bit. Excuse me. Does he get hit by a boar, or does he?
I think it's more. Yeah, it is. It is a boar that runs past him. I don't know if he gets hit, but it's not like anything that's like super.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's like a
terrible.
superficial kind of cut or whatever. So this is where we first hear from Locke, like really hear from him as a leader for everybody, where he's saying like, okay, those were boars, and this is the next day at this point. He said, those are boars. This is what the boars are after. There's all these carcasses and bodies and all these other things that are inside that plane. They're going to keep coming back because they're hungry. And so they decide that, or Jack decides. Jack makes kind of a 180 as a character in this
He
round.
does.
And I don't know if it's because he just killed Mars before this and he's just has a different outlook on everything. But beforehand, we see him as like this really emphatic leader, like someone who's more than willing to listen to everybody. And this time he's very subdued and kind of like shuts down a lot of people in this episode. So he makes the call that we need to be burning this plane and we need to burn all the bodies and those kind of things, regardless of people's religious practices. And I do agree with him on this. Like, it's important to do that.
Yeah.
And my favorite part was Saeed's like, well, like, what about like if they have other plans? And I'm sitting there like, I actually wrote, where did I write this? I was like, burning bodies versus letting them rot. Like, people literally get cremated all the time. Like, this would be way more respectful than just letting them like decompose. Like that to me, I think is way less. Well, there are some people who want to decompose and become a part of the earth, and that's completely fine. But I'm just saying, like in this instance, like for your survival purposes, and also the idea of setting ablaze the cabin at night to try to like warn people. Why is it like day 5 and they haven't tried a giant fire yet? Like
there's a lot of weird things here. So I was very confused by the fact that they haven't attempted to empty out the fuselage at all. It's like
Correct.
5 days later. I'm like, y'all just gonna think that that's gonna take care of itself? Because it's not.
Right.
There's still supplies we're learning like that were in that fuselage that Sawyer was like
Also,
digging through.
there has to be some kind of fuel available, right?
I don't
Because if
maybe?
you had the turning of the turbines and everything when they first crashed, something has to be able to power them. So there must be some kind of fuel source that's there somewhere. So if I'm them, I'm thinking, let's take some of these fucking water bottles and scoop up whatever gasoline, whatever petroleum, whatever it is, so that we could potentially have a better time lighting a bomb fire for everyone to try to find us.
It's true. It's true.
Sorry. I
you're
have
good.
these thoughts. I'm like, there's just a lot of things that are really weird. Like 5 days in, they haven't tried a giant blaze to try to get the smoke to really get someone's attention.
I think that I don't find it weird that the main cast hasn't done that because they know that they're 1,000 miles off course. I find it weird that none of the like extra tertiary characters have not brought up this, or like they just assume they're going to get rescued soon. So that I do find a bit odd.
So then Locke basically comes up with a hunt idea to distract the like mother of the boars to kill one of the piglets who is going to be still giant that they can bring back and they can eat because they ran out of food. There's no more food left. They have to be able to defend for themselves. So they put together this little hump. Nope, that's not it. Hunt.
They just all start having sex on the beach.
It is an orgy. It was really came out of nowhere. No, they put together this little hunting group, which was Kate and Locke, which to me makes sense, and Michael. I'm literally screaming. This guy is literally your worst. Like, why? First of all, you have a child. Why are you going on the hunt? Like, you should be sticking with your. The second of all, like you were the most accident prone person I've seen, and I was like, this fucking idiot. This is like, I was literally I don't know if you saw me, but I'm going, what? Why is Michael going? This is stupid. Like, I was all upset. Out. I was really freaking out, and I was proven right because Michael doesn't pay attention to his surroundings, and then when the boar comes out, it charges and gores him. And I don't know if he gored him what I thought happened, because I thought this was much more in line with Michael's character, is that he had his knife out in a weird way. I thought he fell on top of his knife, but I actually think that he got gored. I don't know.
I think he did get gored. Yeah.
Okay.
But I was like, if he got gored, he'd be really mangled up. Like, cause that's like,
that's why I thought maybe it was just like the knife went into him or whatever. But regardless, he needs to go back. Kate takes him back. Locke has that moment where he gets like, oh my gosh, can I move? And he calls Kate a different name, which I can't remember if it was like Helen.
Oh, yeah, Helen.
Helen?
I think so, maybe.
Or Heidi.
Oh my God, why can't I remember?
I feel like it was an H name.
It is Helen.
Okay. So clearly he's having a moment, and we go back into another flash of Locke's life. We've seen him a couple of times now. We saw him right when the plane crashed, him kind of checking out his foot, that kind of thing. Yep. We see him in this office where he's talking about, he gets a phone call. He's called the colonel, and that they need some information from him. And he hangs up, and he gets yelled at by this like literal jerk of a boss. Like,
asshole.
He is HR's a nightmare, this fucking like moron, whoever's in charge. And he just like belittles the crap out of Locke. And then Locke and his coworker are playing a game during lunch, and the boss comes in and like grabs this pamphlet that he's looking at, which is for an Australian walkabout, which is a pretty intense like kind of hiking journey through the wilderness where you really have to like use your survival skills to like throughout the whole thing. And he's like, you can't do this. And we hear for the first but not the last time Locke say, you can't tell me what I can't do or what I can do or something like that. Nobody can tell me what I can't do.
Yeah. Don't tell me what I can't do.
Don't tell me what I can't do.
I just want to point out one thing.
Yeah.
After seeing this office, first off, so depressing. Second off, that office smells like shit. Like
it tastes. It smells like Brenda's tuna from like 3 days ago.
Like the clear like office walls that like survived like indoor smoking to like they were in the break room. I was like, that break room smells like shit, and I know it does just based off how it looks.
It's awful. Like, you can tell. I would also point out that this is another really great cinematography move that, again, we get to the point at the end of the episode where we do see that Locke is in a wheelchair, but, like, we never see him above, or, like, we never see him below his waist. Like, we always see him sitting and, like, behind a desk or at the thing, but we never see, like, an actual wheelchair. We just see him, like, in a chair. So, or laying in bed. Because then after he gets run down area by the boar, we get a flashback of him talking on the phone with this woman, Helen, and that you can tell that he's working up the courage, and he asks her to come on this walk around trip. That we get some kind of information where she's like, I don't know how, like, you are a customer, like, I can't do this. And you can tell that he's really upset about this. Like, oh, you only see me as a customer, but we've chatted every time. And she said, you can't afford to continue to talk with me anymore. And then she hangs up on him. So this tells me that she's either some kind of like sex phone worker kind of person that he's like developed in his mind has developed a kind of friendship or relationship with. And she's just sees it as a professional obligation.
Yeah, I think the reason they do this is to showcase, they're kind of painting Locke to be this like pathetic person. He is kind of like shown as someone that like doesn't have a lot going for him. And this walkabout trip was kind of his escape from his mundane life, where he wanted a sense of adventure. And they kind of showcase that through the fact that he doesn't have an actual relationship with Helen. He talks about her, as we learn in The Office, he talks her up as if this woman he's been talking to for a while and that he has a relationship with her. And then we, as the audience, learn it's not that at all. And you're meant to feel bad for Locke here. You're meant to like,
but I also think that you're meant to kind of feel like weirded out by him too.
Agreed,
because like
totally.
This idea of like, who is this guy? Like what, like, is he all right?
Agreed.
Like, as a woman watching this, that is instantly like my guard is up. And because like, unfortunately, when you're a woman, you have to be afraid of all men. And then when they have like little moments like this, where a woman is setting a boundary and he's not accepting it, that is incredibly like almost triggering for I would say probably like a lot of women out there.
Totally.
To have this idea of like, oh, boundaries are being crossed, and I just have to like, what is my protective thing? So I did have a moment where I was just like, ooh, maybe he's not a good guy. And I do think that with my theory that of like, what is his past about? Like, what is his, like, what led to an injury? Has he always been like that? Which on a scientific front, I don't think this is an injury that has been there for most of his life. I do think it must be a relatively recent injury to him because he has some form of muscles, because he can all of a sudden stand and walk and run the moment that he gets on the plane crash, and he stands up and Jack says, come over and help me with this guy. And he gladly runs over and does it. If you haven't used muscles in a long time, either because there's no signal to them or whatever, like you don't have a lot of muscle development. So either this is just like something they glossed over for plot purposes, or we're going to find out that this is something that's relatively recent, which would make sense why he is so much more determined to do something like this to prove to himself that this injury doesn't define him. So that is kind of like where my thought process is. I literally said this dude who is Locke's boss should get fired for so many HR violations.
Absolutely.
And then,
so just for the sake of time, I'm gonna I want to get your mindset on some of the things, like big plot things.
Okay.
And I'm going to reveal something.
Okay.
Because if you were to watch this for the first time, when it first aired, you would probably go to like message boards and like people would be theorizing. I think that there's a big thing that you missed.
Okay.
So there is a scene. There's a scene that is a flashback with Locke in the office. And you hear this clickety-clackety noise. This, and it kind of lingers for a bit. Like he's like sitting there and it like lingers on this sound. Later on, this like monster creature thing is zooming in or is coming after Locke, and the same sound plays that you heard in the office. The same clickety-clackety noise. Yeah. And I remember specifically not catching it the first time I watched it.
I definitely didn't catch that.
But definitely went on the boards and everyone was talking about like this is like one of the big things. People were like, oh, what the fuck is this? Oh my God, it made the same noise. Is this a big deal? Is this not a big deal? I only am pointing that out because I remember people talking about it when this first aired.
Okay. Well, I think that what you bring up is an important part, right? So Kate and Michael head back, and Kate is trying to hang up the antenna because Saeed said if we can hang up these different antennas essentially all over the island, we might be able to triangulate where the bigger power source is on this island. If there's been something that a signal that's been put out for 16 years, there's got to be a power source. So basically, they're trying to find that. While that's happening, that like huge invisible kind of monster thingy, I'm just gonna call it invisible shadow kind of like monster because like we haven't seen it yet, so whatever, shows up, and it Kate can see that it's knocking down trees and such, heading right towards where Locke was. So they assume that Locke is dead. Locke went after the boars because he wanted to prove to like basically himself and everybody that he could take down a boar and provide for everybody. And we do see that Locke sees the monster, we assume, because we see him like stop dead in his tracks and look right up, and the monster, like we're looking from the monster's perspective down at Locke. And then we just cut away from that. I'm assuming it was a commercial break when it aired. Yeah. It went from there.
Everyone freaked out. They're like, oh my God.
And my theory was that the monster actually killed the boars, not Locke. And that Locke just brought a boar back. But we don't actually know what happened because Locke doesn't die. He comes back. He brings a boar. The other thing that is really big is that Rose, who is the woman that sat across from Jack, there's two things in this particular scene that are really important for me that I want to discuss. The first is she's sitting there. She's not taking care of herself. She just keeps rubbing her husband's ring, which she was wearing around her neck, because when they fly, her husband's fingers swell, so she always wears it around her neck as a necklace, and then when they land, she would give it back. He was in the bathroom in the back of the plane, which would have detached, and so he is definitely not with them, but likely is in the middle of the ocean and died. So that's what Jack tells her, and she says, oh, he's not dead. That I think that they're probably thinking the same thing about us that we're thinking about them. And so that made me think, holy crap, is there another island where the tail has landed, or that they swam to or something? Or did the tail fall off in the ocean and people made it onto this island, but maybe they're like on the other side? But yeah. I do believe that some people have like psychic connections with people. Yeah. I have seen that in my life. And so I feel like she has a psychic connection with her husband and knows that he's not dead. And I think that her sitting on the beach was not because she was having much of a traumatic response, as much of like just trying to feel him and like feel where he's at and if he's okay and those kind of things. So that's number one. So that's interesting. I can't wait to see if we learn if like there's more people.
Yeah.
Two, Jack is talking with her. When she gets up and walks away, he looks over and there's a man in a suit and tennis shoes that is just staring at him. And we really don't get a good look at him. And he walks into the forest. And then this happens again later, and then Jack runs into the forest, and that's where he runs into Locke, who has the boar. But It's interesting to me. It's like the guy's trying to get him to go into the forest. That's what it is. And we don't know who this guy is. We don't know what his deal is, but it is really crazy.
So theory. What's your theory on this guy in tennis shoes?
So if it wasn't this frickin' island, I would just say that this is some kind of imagination. Like, we get a hint that he went into the medical field because his father made him. And like my instant click was, this guy looked older. Maybe it's his father.
Okay.
And so is he imagining that his father's on the island? And that's why he like really took a second. And then when he saw him again and walked into the woods, because if it was a guy that he didn't know, I feel like the first reaction and the second reaction also makes sense, but there was a feeling of like, I really need to chase this guy down. Like if it's someone you don't know, don't you yell out to them and say, hey? But he doesn't yell out to him. So that makes me feel like it is someone he knows, and just as he's trying to prove to himself that that person is real. I think it's the island in some way telling him to go into the woods. Okay. The other thing I want to point out here is my theory again about elements of this island doing things to people's health. And the second the plane crashes, all of a sudden Locke can walk and run and do all these things. That to me is something with the island. There's like some kind of magic, there's some kind of force or something of the island that allows these things to happen.
Yeah.
Well,
I think even in that same note, like I'm just going down the same path you are. So if that were true, it could also explain like why so many people survive a plane crash like this. Because normally, if like a plane were to crash in an island, everyone's gonna die. Like
also, do you actually you're just laying on the ground outside of a plane crash? Wouldn't you be like stuck in your seat? I think that there's why is Jack in the middle of the woods? Like when this first in the jungle, when it first starts off, there's a lot of elements to me that like make me feel like maybe this island isn't like on our plane or realm on Earth, but somehow they went into like a different realm. Like there's things here that to me just like don't make sense.
Totally. There is one scene that I absolutely want to talk about, and that is Hurley fishing. Hurley, there's this like side plot of Shannon
Hurley and Charlie.
Yeah, like fishing. Shannon and Boone, and Boone's like, you can't take care of yourself, and Shannon's like, yes, I can, and so she convinces Charlie to fish for her, and then Charlie and Hurley fishing, I feel like could have been maybe like a blooper reel. Maybe they were like, they told him, go pretend to be fishing in character over there, and we'll just film it and see if it fits for the episode.
If it fits.
Yeah, it's so funny. They were totally ad-libbing that.
Totally. I just kind of felt like that was a weird plot point to like put into an episode like this, which is like, why does Shannon have to prove that she can quote unquote take care of herself? Which she can't. The whole point is that what she does is she ropes other people in to do stuff for her. And that's how she takes care of herself. I openly unmuted and I said, Shannon can die. And then I muted myself again. I still feel like that. There's no point for her character as far as I'm concerned.
I do wonder like if that'll go anywhere or if it won't, because like similarly, what I've realized on my basically third rewatch of this is so many questions are being introduced in these first 4 episodes that are quickly getting answered in the next episode. So for example, Locke talking to Walt being like a miracle. We learn in Walkabout, the miracle he's referring to is the fact that he can walk again, which is like...
But that's what I think is weird, is that he said to... Walt says that... It made it seem like it wasn't that Locke had the miracle. It was that...
I mean, maybe not.
Walt's dad had the miracle.
Potentially, yes. What I'm referring to is that, like, whether or not the answer we are given is the true answer, it's very much like... Here is a question, here's an answer. So I'm wondering if this is like similar to like, there's a reason they're showing us that Shannon can't defend herself. Maybe that'll get answered in another episode or 2. Similarly to like, we saw, I think Rose sitting by, Rose hasn't shown up for a while now, for like the last like 2 episodes. We answer, where has Rose been? What's going on here? There is like one last thing that I definitely want to talk about is there is definitely like Jack has this aversion to a memorial ceremony. Mm-hmm. And numerous characters are coming up to him, such as Claire, Saeed. They constantly bring about, we need to do some sort of funeral service for the people within this fuselage. And Jack just seems very against this idea of like putting together any kind of memorial anything. What are your thoughts on that?
I think my initial thought again is that he just had to basically betray his own oath last time. He killed somebody, and I think that by burning the bodies, it like burns away any sort of reality of like, okay, like we're actually like people died, and he is like actually facing this for the first time rather than being like in emergency mode. We see in the first episode where he has that like moment where he says he allows the fear to set in for 5 seconds, and then after he counts to 5 he just lets things go, and we haven't seen him slow down since. And I feel like after he killed Mars in the last episode, this is where the fear is about to take him, when you burn bodies, when you officially have a memorial service, when you say these people have died, what do you do to move on from there?
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is.
That's a great way to look at it. I just want to talk really quick about how profound this episode is to a lot of people within Lost. I nearly cried, like watching this for the 3rd time, because the way that they use music in this episode is so good. The swelling up of like, there's like a crescendo to the moment where Locke finally realizes he can walk again. And you just see this like wave of relief come over him.
In the middle of chaos, when everybody's like screaming and people are injured and dying, and he's just like smiling and laughing and having this moment. I totally agree. The other thing that they did, and you know that I had a whole moment about this afterwards, is they used the wheelchair throughout the episode, where they kind of use it to collect sticks, and they're dumping it. They're like using it as a wheelbarrow. And then they burn it with the fuselage, which my idea was like, I know it's symbolism to burn this, but like, come the fuck on. Why are you burning a chair that can be mobile? You don't know who might need that when you're on a deserted island. Secondly, there can't be that many comfortable seats left. Yeah, there's some of the rows that you were able to have. Might as well have a friggin' like chair when you have one. Third, like I just sat back and I was like, I understand Locke's I mean, I actually understand this. Locke is probably happy to see it burn because if he sees that burn, then he doesn't have this backup idea of, well, I can slip back and, I might need that someday. It's the same thing of like, when people say, I'm going to get rid of these bigger clothes because I'm not going to gain the weight back. And like that helps you stay true to like the weight that you're at, right? So like if you have them in reserve, then you almost have like this idea in your head that like, well, I can slip back. And I feel like Locke is determined and proven to have this be a permanent fix. And so I understand the symbolism behind this, but I'm just kind of like, that could be like you guys were using it for a variety of different. Why not hold on to it? Why are you burning it? It made no sense to me.
Yeah, I think it's so funny why they would burn it. I think that's not why, but it kind of feeds into why this episode means a lot to a lot of people is because again, the writing is so good, the music is so good, the symbolism is amazing of this like character who we initially were kind of like, ew, who is this guy? And when we learn more about him, we relate or we have like a connection to him in just one episode where it's so impactful, his story. And I am very excited to see like where his character goes, like going forward. But enough about that. I want to get your MVP and LVP for this episode.
My MVP is obviously Locke. Like we got to know all about Locke. We root for him. We might still be questioning a lot about him. Yeah. But I do think that this is his episode. And so you can't help but feel emotional and cheer for him and such. So he's obviously the MVP. My LVP is actually Jack. I think that Jack is reluctant to sit down with Rose. He's reluctant in all these different things. And people notice it. And Saeed, I know that Jack wasn't there, but Saeed said that, people's hope is really valuable. And what Jack is doing is essentially eliminating people's hope. And so that's why I think he's the LVP for this episode.
That's a great observation. But yeah, he kind of is sucking the energy out of the room. I've said this off podcast. He looks like Nathan Drake from the Uncharted series, but like whinier and bitchier and like.
But what's the other thing you said about Jack?
I forgot. You're going to have to tell me. Probably something messy.
This is what Dylan said. Jack looks like somebody who cries after he has sex.
Oh, yeah. He totally does, doesn't he? Jack totally cries after he has sex. I can see. And if you cry after sex, it's fine. But
I think that Kate's the type that like has sex and goes, ugh. And then like whatever. So they're kind of like a couple made in heaven.
They kind of are.
Obviously there's a lot of chemistry there too. Like this is obviously going to be the romance of the series. I get it. Like from the first moment that they met,
We'll have to see. I don't know. Things can never be too predictable and Lost. So we'll have to see. Cool. This has been like kind of a juicier episode.
I mean, to be fair, it did take us like 10 minutes to get into the actual stuff because we were talking about rawr and all these other things. But before we end, I do want to give a special shout out again to our editor behind the scenes, Stefanduck.
Yes.
Please check him out on Twitter and on Twitch. Now TikTok. He just started a TikTok the other day at Stefanduck. And then on Twitch, it's Stefanduck. Twitch.tv/Stefanduck.
Let me pull it up real fast. We do have one comment that I wanted to highlight. Hopefully I can find it. You posted it in our Discord channel. Oh no, maybe I can't find it. They tweeted at us, I think. Okay, we'll pull it up for the next episode for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, send any comments your way. Just an FYI, everyone, we are going to be filming another episode in advance this Saturday because I will be gone for a wedding. Yes, everyone's taking proper precautions. Everyone's vaccinated at the wedding. We're going to still be wearing masks and using hand sanitizer, but I will be out of town, so we have to film something in advance. So if you would like one of your comments to show up in one of our future episodes, make sure to get it in before this Saturday, so that way we can shout you out.
That's right. And make sure that if you have any questions or concerns or comments about The Nanny, you send them my way to @AugustaWind11 on Twitter. And if you have anything that you want to say, questions, concerns, theories, whatever, you want to send them over to Dylan about Lost, then do so. Remember, we are trying to keep these spoiler-free as much as possible for both Dylan and myself with these amazing shows.
Yes, and if you are enjoying Hot Mess Moments, make sure to like, subscribe, leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. Everything.
Review, please.
Yeah, please
take
review.
An extra 30 seconds and say, Beth's hair looked amazing in this episode. No, just kidding. You don't have to say that.
Please,
You
actually,
don't have to say that. You can say it. You don't have to.
Yeah, but you could. Seriously, all the support helps us out tremendously. If you know anyone or any kind of fan clubs or anything that like are fans of The Nanny or Lost, maybe consider suggesting us to them. All the support helps us out.
On Reddit, on places where on message boards, on AIM chat rooms. I mean, you go for it, girl.
Bathroom stalls, like anything.
Bathroom stalls. I don't know if I want hot mess moments on a bathroom stall. I feel like that's very different.
I think I do. Oh. All right. Well, this has been a messy, hot mess moment of episode 4 of The Lost and the Nanny. Lost and the Nanny.
The Lost and the Nanny.
And we will see you all next week with another hot mess moment. Bye.
Toodles.